Черные появились позже, со стороны ботанического сада. Черные, огромные, на голову выше самого высокого человека создания из ночных кошмаров. Жуткие, как вывернутые наизнанку люди. Чудовища, рожденные, чтобы нас погубить. Молва приписывала им чудовищную силу и неестественную злобу. Говорили, что они голыми руками разрывают вооруженных людей.
Чё за...
Это неправда. Правда страшней.
While light may be one of the most overused metaphors in all of fiction, it's hard to deny how appropriate it is for a society forced to live underground after experiencing nuclear annihilation. Based on the work of Dmitry Glukhovsky, Metro Last Light is a sequel to 2010's cult favorite Metro 2033. It's a continuation of the tale of a young man named Artyom, who combated the threat of a mysterious group of creatures called the Dark Ones. Oddly enough, the Last Light referred to in the title for Metro Last Light happens to be one of these so-called Dark Ones. In this way, the proverbial Last Light is a bit of a sly use of such a well-worn metaphor, and thankfully, Last Light's cleverness extends well beyond its subtitle. Picking up a year after Artyom has destroyed the Dark Ones, the Last Light begins with a bombshell that a young Dark One has managed to survive the blast. Artyom is tasked with finding and eliminating the young Dark One, and along the way he falls into a plot hatched by the Communist Red Line to seize control of the Metro. The main plot is more engaging than that of its predecessor, focusing on the various factions that struggle to control the Metro, and providing a defined nemesis. Where Last Light really excels is in the way its narrative unfolds. Much like Bioshock Infinite, you'll find yourself in settlements where you're free to roam and engage with the locals. They recount their struggles, reveal their greatest fears beyond those covered in the main plot arc. One incredibly poignant scene involves an old man creating shadow puppets for a group of children, who cannot guess what he's making because they've never seen the creatures he is emulating. In this way, Metro is a game that chooses to show rather than tell. You see a theater that once hosted elegant ballets, now hosts third-rate vaudeville acts. You visit a settlement called Venice that is little more than a shanty town on a series of underground causeways. The decay and desperation are apparent, as is the reason you fight. This approach to storytelling wouldn't have as much impact if it weren't for Last Light's extraordinary visual presentation. Boasting the best lighting engine on the market, the tunnels and settlements of Last Light are moody and dark. These tunnels offer an impressive amount of variety, and when a bright white shaft of light from the surface penetrates the dark, illuminating a small section of your character's subterranean world, it's hard not to appreciate its unconventional beauty. Character models are detailed, with each stitch of their scavenged outerwear carefully rendered in the most convincing manner. Members of each faction are easily identifiable and display varied costumes and outfits. Environments have destructive elements that break away and deform when shot, and particle effects fill the air with suspended particles, smoke, and sparks. You spend far more time above ground here than in 2033, exploring swamps, the Dark One's bombed-out settlement, ghost towns, and vacant depots. Violent storms roll through these above-ground sections, sending Artyom scurrying for cover as radiation-rich wind sweeps through, rain comes down in sheets, and lightning coruscates. Textures are extremely rich, with layers of rust, grime, and peeling paint making every wall and prop look like it's been through a furnace in the deepest part of hell and coughed up into this post-apocalyptic version of Moscow. If it wasn't for some stiff facial animations, Metro Last Light might have dethroned Crysis 3 as the benchmark for visuals. Metro Last Light doesn't deviate from the gameplay formula established by its predecessor. It's a wonderful mix-up of first-person shooter and survival horror. Stealth is encouraged during encounters with humans as a way to conserve precious ammunition. It is in these sections that Last Light's most major flaw becomes apparent, with human AI that isn't terribly savvy. While unalerted, enemies can trip over Artyom before they realize his existence, and once alerted, enemies rush around blindly and stupidly, like sharks in a feeding frenzy. They seem to have little awareness of their environment, and are easily outwitted unless you're in the wide open. That's not to say they can't be deadly though. It only takes a couple of enemies a few seconds to turn Artyom into Swiss cheese. This makes stealth segments more consistent than those in 2033, but ultimately not much more satisfying. Throwing knives, pneumatic guns, and silenced weapons give Artyom plenty of offensive tools to keep his enemies at a distance. Fights with monsters hold up much better, however. Their numbers and speed ensure that they don't need to be razor sharp to pose a threat. What really makes these encounters with mutants stand out is 4A's excellent ability to build tension. Last Light isn't concerned with making sure that there is something to shoot in every room and hallway, giving the player a false sense of security. Even areas away from the critical path are fair game for surprise, and while on the surface you're forced to listen to your character struggle to breathe as the filters of his gas mask degrade. It's unnerving, particularly when you're trying to scavenge for much needed supplies and unsure of how much longer your filters will need to last. You hear enemies long before you see them, and their speed allows them to quickly emerge from the shadows for surprise attacks. While the dark is your best friend when confronting your fellow man, engaging mutants in well-lit areas is much less nerve-wracking. Many creatures have armor that requires tactics other than spray and pray. There are arachnid-like mutants that have an aversion to light, and thus have a tendency to flip over and expose their soft belly when Artyom shines his flashlight on them. It adds some variation to the proceedings. It doesn't take long to deplete all of the ammo you carefully save by dispatching your enemies in a stealthily manner once a few large creature encounters occur. Luckily you can gather ammo for all types of weapons, so it's easy enough to dump an empty shotgun and pick up a pistol. You may lose some firepower you are packing, but it's still possible to defend yourself. The shooting mechanics have greatly improved in Last Light. Guns feel like they pack more of a punch, and in the normal mode you're given feedback via your aiming reticule as to whether or not a shot was a clean hit or a hit to enemy's armor plating. Pneumatic weapons seem to pack more of a punch for a longer period of time before you need to pump them back up, though conventional weapons are much better to use in a standard firefight. Merchants also sell attachments like extended barrels, silencers, extended magazines, laser sights, and of course scopes. Wise players will hold on their money and focus on upgrading one or two weapons, since you're often forced to drop your weapon once you have depleted the ammunition for it, and pick up another weapon type. Upgrades are not stored either, so once you've dropped a weapon, you'll not be able to equip those attachments on another weapon of the same type. Gamers who can get their hands on a copy of the limited edition of Last Light, or who are willing to pay an extra $5, can get Ranger Mode, which rebalances the difficulty by making both your character and enemies easier to kill. It also makes additional supplies much more scarce, forcing you to sneak past as many enemies as possible. It also gets rid of the HUD and aiming reticule, making it a much more immersive experience. Speaking of immersion, the options menu does include an option for Russian voice acting, but only dialogue central to the plot is subtitled, so it's not recommended for a first playthrough for those who are not fluent.
А лекарства? Да с этим богатством еще лет 100 под землей торчать можно.
Не знаю. Я вот не могу никак привыкнуть.
Metro Last Light improves upon the formula that 2033 established in 2010. Its blend of survival horror, stealth, and first-person shooting make it a very unique title. Not only is it unique, but its narrative is well executed, and 4A seems to be one of the few developers that understands the importance of atmosphere and tension. If you can run it at its highest settings, Last Light is a visual powerhouse that will surely whet the appetite of console gamers, looking forward to what the next generation will offer. The human AI can be incredibly dumb, but the irritation that results from this is short-lived when the encounters with mutated monstrosities start. Gunplay is strong, and the customization options for weapons ensure that at least one gun becomes your best friend while playing Metro. 4A Games are proving themselves to be a studio to watch and anticipate.